Hey y'all, it's Miss Flores. So today we are going to be adding and subtracting fractions that have different denominators. So in order to do this, we're going to do like a combination of basically everything we've been doing the past week and a half, finding equivalent fractions, adding or subtracting our fractions, and then simplifying our final answers if we can. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first problem we're going to look at is going to be a word problem. It says that Malia bought shell beads and glass beads to weave into designs in her baskets. She bought 1/4 pound of shell beads and 3/8 pound of glass beads. How many pounds of beads did she buy? So we're trying to find the total amount of beads, right? The total amount of beads that she bought. So in order to do that, I'm going to do 1/4 plus 3/8. Well, we know from trying to add fractions with models, right, that we can't add fractions that have different denominators. So what I need to do is I need to take my denominators, which are 4 and 8, and find their least common denominator. In order to do that, I need to list the multiples of 4 and 8 and figure out what's the first multiple that they both share. So we're going to list our multiples of 4 and 8 and figure out what that's going to be. Well, 4, we've got 4, 8, 12, 8, we've already got 8, right? 8 is going to be the first one that they share. So we're going to turn both 1/4 and 3/8 into 8s. So let's look at 1/4. We're going to take our 1/4 and we're going to turn it into 8s. This is where equivalent fractions comes into play, right? Well, in order to turn 4 into 8, I know that I have to multiply by 2, right? Multiplying by 2 is what turns 4 into 8. So I got to do the same thing to my numerator to get my new numerator. Well, 1 times 2 is 2. So that means my 1/4 becomes 2/8. So now my problem has become 2/8 instead of 1/4 plus 3/8. We didn't have to convert 3/8 to 8s because 3/8 was already 3/8, right? So our answer for what we're going to do is we're just going to add the numerators, right? 2 plus 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. Our denominator stays the same. So our final answer ends up being 5/8. Now, can I simplify that final answer? No, because 5 is a prime number. 5 can only be divided by 5. 8 cannot be divided by 5. So 5/8 is as simplified as it can get. All right, let's look at 9/10 minus 2/5. So just like before, right? I cannot subtract them in the way that they are, right? Our denominators aren't the same. So I need to take my denominators, find their least common denominator by writing my multiples. So I'm going to write my multiples for 10 and 5. Well, 10 is 10, 20, 30. 5 is 5, 10. So 10 is going to be the first one that they share, right? So I need to convert my 2/5 to tenths, right? 9/10 is already tenths, so it gets to stay as is. So we're going to turn our 2/5 into tenths using equivalent fractions just like we did before. So we know to go from 5 to 10, I have to multiply by 2. Well, whatever we do to the bottom, we've got to do to the top. So we're going to do 2 times 2 to get our new numerator. 2 times 2 is 4. So that means that 4/10 is equal to 2/5. So that 4/10 is what we're going to put in the 2/5 spot. So now our problem has become 9/10 minus 4/10. 9/10 minus 4/10. Well, to solve that, we're just going to subtract our numerators, right? Let me scoot this over a little bit. So to subtract that, we're just going to subtract our numerators, right? So we're going to do 9 minus 4, which is 5. And our denominator stays the same, which is 10. So we end up with 5/10 as our answer. Now, if we can simplify our final answer, we should. we can simplify 5/10, right? 5 and 10 can both be divided by 5. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to divide both numerator and denominator by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So our final answer is 1/2. So 9/10 minus 2/5 is equal to 1/2. Let's look at our next one. We've got 5/12 plus 1/3. 5/12 plus 1/3. So we cannot add with fractions that are different, right? So y'all know the drill at this point. Find their least common denominator. So we're going to list our multiples for 3 and our multiples for 12. So 12, we've got 12, 24, 36. 3, we've got 3, 6, 9, 12. So 12 is the first one that they share. So since 5/12 is already 12ths, we don't have to change it, but we do need to change our 1/3 into 12ths. So let's do that. We're going to change our 1/3 into 12ths. Well, I know to go from 3 to 12, I have to multiply by 4. So we're going to do 1 times 4 to get our new numerator. So 1 times 4 is 4, which means that 1/3 is equal to 4/12. So we're going to substitute 4/12 into 1/3's old spot. So our problem now becomes 5/12 plus 4/12. And now we are ready to just add our numerators. So 5 plus 4 is 9. 12 is our denominator, so it ends up being 9/12. Now, can we simplify 9/12? Yes, right? Because 9 and 12 can both be divided by 3. So that's what we need to do to get our final answer. Is we're going to take our 9/12 and divide both our numerator and denominator by 3 to simplify. Well, 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So our final answer ends up being 3/4. So 5/12 plus 1/3 was equal to 9/12, and that's simplified to 3/4. All right, let's look at another one. We've got a subtraction problem where we've got 3/4 minus 1/8. Y'all know the drill by now. We can't subtract these, right? Because they have different denominators. I've got one denominator that's 4, one denominator that's 8. I need to find their least common denominator to turn both these fractions into new fractions. So we're going to skip count by 4 and skip count by 8. List their multiples so that way we know what they can both become. Well, 4 is going to be 4, 8, 12, 16. 8 is already 8. So since 8 is the first one that they can both turn into, we're going to turn them into 8s. 1/8 is already 8s. So 3/4 is the only one that needs to become a new fraction. So we're going to turn them both into 8s. So to turn 4 into 8s, I know that 4 times 2 is 8, right? So to make it an equivalent fraction, whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So we're going to do 3 times 2 to get our new numerator. 3 times 2 is 6. So that means that 3/4 is now going to be 6/8 in my problem, right? Because they're the same value, they just look a little different. So we now have 6/8 minus 1/8. And now I'm ready to solve. I'm going to subtract my numerators. 6 minus 1 is 5. And my denominator stays 8. So we end up with 5/8 as our final answer. 5 is prime, right? So 5 can only be divided by 5. 8 cannot be divided by 5, which means that 5/8 is as simplified as it can get. All right, last question. We have 2/5 plus 3/7. 2/5 plus 3/7. So, y'all know the drill by now. 5 and 7, those are different denominators, right? So we need to find their least common denominator. In order to do that, I've got to list the multiples for 5, the multiples for 7, and figure out what is the first one that they both share. So let's do that. We're going to skip count by 5, skip count by 7. Well, 5, we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Let's see, 7. 7, we've got 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. Well, 30, we didn't go one more, so let's do that. 35 would be next. So 35 is going to be their least common denominator, right? So now, all of our previous one, we've only had to change one fraction. Now, on this one, we're going to have to change both. So we're going to change 2/5 into 30/5. And then we're also going to change 3/7 into 30/5. Because neither one of them started off already being 30/5. So we know that 5 times 7 got us 35, right? So we're going to have to do 2 times 7 to get us our new numerator. 2 times 7 is 14. So 2/5 is equal to 14 30/5. For 3/7, I know that 7 times 5 is 35. So we'll do 3 times 5 to get our new numerator. 3 times 5 is 15. So now we have our equivalent fractions. We're just going to substitute those new fractions into their old fractions place. So where I had 2/5 first will now be 14 30/5 plus, and where I had 3/7 will now be 15 30/5. And now we are ready to solve. So we can just add our numerators and then leave our denominators alone. So 14 plus 15 is 29. And then our denominator was 35. So we end up with 29 30/5. 29 30/5 cannot be simplified because 29 is prime. So it can only be divided by 29 if we were wanting to simplify. 35 is not divisible by 29, right? So our final answer is going to be 29 30/5. So that is solving addition and subtraction problems with fractions that have different denominators. So they're solved basically the exact same way, except for our final operation of adding or subtracting just changes the problem. Every other step, though, is the exact same way. So let's go ahead and take a look at y'all's assignment for today. All right, y'all. So here is today's assignment. So just like what we did before in the video lesson earlier, it is all going to be adding or subtracting problems. So you notice some questions, you have your problem, and then it'll say first answer and simplest form. These slides are a hint to tell you that the first answer that you get when you are done solving is not the simplest form of that fraction, right? So make sure that you are simplifying that fraction. So the original one that you get here, before you simplify, will go here. After you simplify, you'll type it in here. Questions that do not need to be simplified will look like this, right? So 1/2 minus 3/8. When you find your common denominator and you find equivalent fractions and you subtract, your answer is going to go here. It will already be in simplest form. So you'll type your numerator and your denominator there. So just like I've shown, if it can be simplified, you'll have slides that look like this. If it cannot be simplified, you'll have slides that look like this. So this is kind of just a hint to remind you to simplify. Some fractions cannot be simplified, some fractions can. Our last two problems are going to be word problems, so make sure we are reading them carefully. You will put your answer here, your final answer, whether that can or cannot be simplified needs to be here. And then you're going to ask, and then it's going to ask you, can your answer be simplified? Why or why not? If it can, tell me why. If it cannot, tell me why. And you're going to type that little phrase right here, however you want to phrase it. Same thing for the second word problem as well. Type your answer here. Let me know if it can be simplified, why or why not, right here. So there are 12 questions that you have to complete, all pretty straightforward, all adding or subtracting with fractions, just like what was explained earlier on in the video lesson. We will go over whatever questions y'all want to go over when we meet back up later today. And if you need anything, just let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to help you out. Let me know if y'all need anything, and I'll talk to y'all later, guys. Have a great day. Bye.